DALL-E 3 is a massive leap forward, and in today's comprehensive tutorial, we're going to cover prompting, DALLE Vision, image reimagination, using GPTs with DALL-E 3, and so much more. Prepare to level up, and let's get right into it. To get started, open chat.openai.com. DALL-E 3 is powered by GPT-4, so just make sure you're using the latest GPT-4 model by selecting it in the top left corner. Now, you can generate images right here in the regular ChatGPT window, as ChatGPT can automatically detect when you're looking to get an image generated. Or you can head over to the Explore page and launch the DALLE GPT from there. There's currently no real difference between using the ChatGPT window or the DALLE GPT in terms of capability and features. The only quirk I've noticed between the two options is that when ChatGPT is being buggy, the DALLE GPT is not, and vice versa. GPTs were recently just launched, so if you're new to them and would like a bit more context, feel free to bookmark the GPT build tutorial I've linked below. For today's DALLE 3 tutorial, you'll need a ChatGPT Plus or Enterprise subscription to use all these features. You can see what plan you're currently on by heading over to the My Plan section. And just in case you're on a Plus plan and can't access DALL-E in your ChatGPT account, head over to Settings and Beta Features, and make sure plugins and advanced data analysis are enabled. Okay, let's start with DALLE 3's most popular use case, image generation. We'll enter a basic prompt asking it to generate a car driving on the mountainside. And voila, it turns our prompt into two image options we can further edit. This is a decent image, but it could definitely be a bit better, as we'll see in a second. But before that, let's click into one of the images. Then we'll click into the eye icon next to the download icon. Clicking the eye icon reveals a really cool feature. You can view the actual prompt DALLE 3 used in order to give you an image it deems satisfactory. So why did it change our prompt? Well, DALLE 3 is powered by GPT-4, which is the incredibly powerful large language model that also powers the latest version of ChatGPT. OpenAI's research showed that using very detailed prompts gives significantly better results when generating images. So every time you type in a prompt, DALLE 3 goes through a process known as prompt rewriting, which taps into the incredible natural language processing ability of GPT-4 to optimize your prompt so it can deliver what it deems the most visually desired results. And whenever you download an image, the file name will actually contain the prompt as well. Pretty cool and convenient in case you'd like to come back in the future and regenerate a similar image. Okay, now that we know that DALL-E works better with more detailed and descriptive prompts, let's take our first prompt and add some out-of-this-world detail to it. The prompt will ask it to give us an image that is truly out of this world. Now, of course, art is very subjective, but honestly, I much prefer our second attempt by a country mile. Let's pick the second image. As you can see, we're now on an alien planet with beautiful scenery and breathtaking landscapes. But interestingly, even with a very detailed initial prompt, GPT-4 still changed it quite a fair bit to produce this interstellar result. There are ways to increase the adherence of the final prompt to your original prompt, either by saying so in the chat window itself or by using advanced options such as GPTs and custom instructions, which we'll be taking a look at later in this tutorial. DALLE 3 is incredibly powerful, and as we've just seen, to really unleash its potential, it's important to always work on and experiment with your prompts. Because even though it tweaks your prompts in the background, by giving DALL-E a really good starting place, you'll be able to make your desired images that much faster. However, fear not if you struggle with generating compelling prompts. ChatGPT is an awesome brainstorming partner. Let's say I want help generating an image for a dessert, because food is life. Let's get ChatGPT to help with prompting. So I'll enter, I'd like to generate a photograph of a mouth-watering dessert that looks like it was taken by a professional foodie. Can you create a series of prompts to help me decide what the final image should look like? ChatGPT then goes on to give us a series of really delicious looking prompts. As it says, each prompt is designed to capture a different essence and style of dessert photography, from classic and elegant to playful and colorful. You can choose the one that resonates most with your vision for the final image. This is awesome. There's no way on earth I would have thought of any of these descriptions by myself. Let's pick option 2. You know what? This looks pretty good. But the great thing about DALL-E 3 and ChatGPT is that you can always ask it to generate a different option if you change your mind, as it keeps track of your entire conversation. So let's let it know that I'd actually prefer to go with option 4. Okay, this looks pretty strange, and quickly looking at the prompt, we can see how it pretty much used its own fleshed out descriptions to generate this deconstructed cheesecake. Now, DALL-E 3 really excels when you give it instructions a normal human being would understand. So sometimes it is worth resisting the temptation to get too complicated and fancy with your prompts. But congrats, at this point you now have a foundational understanding of AI generation image prompting. There are tons more interesting prompting techniques, and I will continue to introduce new ones as we go along. But fundamentally, being detailed and descriptive in your prompts should get you that much closer to the results you're looking for from the get-go. Just remember, detailed doesn't mean complicated. Now, let's take a look at editing and refining our AI-generated images. First, let's prompt it to give us a close-up drip painting of an elderly woman with a hopeful look in her eye. This is a much shorter prompt than I'd recommend, but for the purpose of time and this tutorial, I'll let DALL-E 3 do its magic behind the scenes. And would you look at that, our first roadblock. As I mentioned before, there are hiccups to be found. DALL-E 3 seems to have pretty strict copyright guardrails, which I found oftentimes get it very wrong. So, if you run into this sort of error, what can you do? You can simply tweak your prompt and try again. So let's try just that. You can either click the little pencil here and change your first prompt, but for comparison's sake, let's tweak our prompt and then re-prompt it in the message box down below. Okay, so we changed our prompt to a close-up of an elderly woman with a hopeful look in her eye. The artwork should embody the drip paint style. Let's see if that gives us a better result. And lo and behold, it worked. Now, before we dig into the final prompt DALL-E 3 used to generate this stunning image, you will notice our short but sweet prompt still includes several key details you should aim to have in your image generation prompts, depending on what you're making. These are the subject, style, composition, and emotion. I like the first image better here, so let's go with that. And this is our optimized prompt. Pretty incredible stuff. Now, let's edit our image. We'll prompt DALL-E to add a faint image of the rising sun to the first image to further convey the feeling of hope, and see what we get. Okay, the floating head with the drip painting is kinda creepy, so let's give her a neck and shoulders. Okay, this one is much cooler and much more compelling. Now, supposing you feel like you're on the right path, but would like to see different variations, you could simply ask it to generate new variations based on the updated prompts. So, let's ask it to generate new variations that use a dramatic monochromatic color scheme. You notice my prompt actually has a typo and is grammatically incorrect, but GPT-4 is smart enough to usually pick up on what the user truly intends. I really like the first image. Let's click into it and briefly look at what the final prompt was. Absolutely brilliant. Now, as you've seen most times, DALL-E is going to give you square images. However, you actually do have the option to set the aspect ratio at any time. Supported formats are standard, which is square, wide, which tends to be 16:9, and vertical for mobile formats. I do strongly recommend establishing your aspect ratio right in your initial prompt, as I've seen that it sometimes struggles to ideate and properly expand upon images it has already generated. Either way, let's give it a try with a hope portrait and see what happens. I'll ask it to convert the first image into a wide format. And as you can see, there is a pretty big dramatic difference from the first image in square format and the second image in wide format, which is why I mentioned including your aspect ratio in your very first prompt. Before we move on though, let's try copy that exact prompt in the image we did like and see if that helps. So I'll open my preferred image, click copy. then paste it as is, then the aspect ratio should be wide. And let's see what happens this time around. Okay, still a bit different, but you know what? We'll take it. But I think in this case, image number 1 wins yet again. And for good measure, let's quickly see what happens when we convert the first image into the vertical format. And boom, a mobile-friendly image ready to go. Now, of course, if you'd like more creative freedom, you could generate most of your images in the wide format, export them into a tool such as Canva or Photoshop, and then edit them down to the size you most prefer. Now, at this point in time, you may have noticed that I'm actually in my third window. We started with our mountain car drive, the dessert photo, and our hope photo. Every time you prompt DALL-E or ChatGPT, it automatically names your chat. However, in this case, since we started with an error, it then named our chat content policy not met. So you can simply click the 3 dots next to chat name, click rename, and we'll call it our hope portrait. Now, apparently, you don't have to start a new chat for new image ideas, but I do like clean starts when working with new contexts, images, and ideas, as sometimes ChatGPT does hallucinate and might pick context from the wrong piece of conversation. Okay, when OpenAI CEO tweeted this image earlier this year, this one detail blew everyone's mind. While at first glance it might seem like a bit of a clumsy font, the fact that perfectly legible text was generated by DALL-E was incredible. For example, the exact same prompt in DALLE-2 yields absolute gibberish. And this applies to current versions of other well-known and very capable tools such as Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. So, let's try to generate our own text in DALLE-3. We'll start with this prompt, a billboard that says closing down sale, which is located in an abandoned city that's now overrun with vegetation. Okay, image 1 seems to have the correct spelling, but looking at image 2, it has a definite typo. So let's click into it and see what its prompt was. Interesting how it added details such as a post-apocalyptic scene with an abandoned city overrun by lush green vegetation. Pretty cool. When it comes to typos, you could try overcome them by employing our prompt fundamentals, which are to provide a clear and detailed description that avoids ambiguity, especially when it comes to the desired placement of the text. But remember, if you're going to be generating images containing text in DALL-E 3, do expect for it to be an iterative process where you will have to have a back and forth with DALL-E until you land on the right image, spellings, and placement. Honestly, at least for now, it may be best to just generate your image without text in DALL-E and then add it in later using a tool such as Canva or Adobe Firefly. But let's try correct our typo. We'll let it know that the second image has a typo in the word closing and it should only have one eye. And would you look at that, these images look much cooler and they have the correct spellings. A job well done. Okay, crazy thing is we have just scratched the surface of DALL-E 3 and things are about to get a whole lot more interesting. First, I'm going to upload this delicious looking breakfast. Clearly someone made this DALL-E 3 tutorial hungry. You can upload images by dragging them directly into the message box or clicking the little attachment icon and selecting the files from there. And for now, let's just hit enter and see what happens. Incredibly, DALL-E has perfectly described the image, right down to it being in a skillet with a sunny side up egg with its yolk still intact. It even notices the bread in the corner and suggests that it's either rye or whole grain bread. Really impressive. So how did it do all of this? Well, this is because ChatGPT, and so by extension DALL-E, is equipped with what's known as computer vision, or more popularly now, AI vision. In a nutshell, computer vision is a field of AI that enables computers to derive meaningful information from digital images, videos, and other visual inputs. We are literally living in the future. So let's take a look at 3 practical use cases of DALL-E 3's vision capabilities. We'll start with image recognition. First, let's pretend the image we just uploaded is a picture I took at a restaurant, and I'd like to know how to make it at home. We'll ask it to suggest a recipe I can make at home to replicate the dish pictured. And just like that, we have an awesome recipe that seems pretty legit. And I, for one, am a fan, as this recipe doesn't come with a long backstory on why the author happens to resonate so much with eggs. And for the cherry on top, let's get it to provide us with the nutritional information for this creation. And just like that, we have our key nutritional info, with this dish coming in at about 600 to 800 calories, which does sound pretty legitimate. DALL-E also provides a disclaimer at the very beginning, knowing that it does require precise measurements for each ingredient, as well as knowing the specific products used. As for example, you could use turkey sausages instead of pork sausages, which would have a difference in calories. Okay, if your mind isn't blown yet, let's use DALL-E for image analysis as our second use case. I'm going to upload one of the most famous pieces of artwork in the world, Van Gogh's Starry Night. And I'm going to ask DALL-E to act as a curator at a world-renowned museum and tell us about the piece. Side note, adding act as to your prompts is another great prompting technique to better guide DALL-E in the direction you'd like it to go. And here we now have a pretty compelling description of this painting, with DALL-E letting us know that it's renowned for its swirling, vibrant sky filled with dazzling stars that seem to pulsate with energy and emotion. Feel like I'm at the museum already. The third fun use case of DALL-E's Vision AI is reimagining images. This means creating a new image based on the properties of an uploaded image. How it works is DALL-E will analyze your image to generate a text description for itself, which it'll then use as the basis for reimagination. Let's take this skyline view of Copenhagen as an example and reimagine it in a very healthy universe where everything is made of vegetables, and see what we get. And would you look at that, it's transported our image to a world where everything is made of vegetables. Now clearly this looks nothing like Copenhagen, but it did pick up on the key features such as roadways, waterways, and medium-rise buildings. And looking at the prompt, it seems that each vegetable has been assigned a very important role, such as trees made from broccoli and cauliflower. Now, there are both tons more fun and practical use cases for DALL-E's vision capabilities. So following this tutorial, be sure to take time to experiment, and when in doubt, it's okay to ask DALL-E itself for guidance, as we saw before. Just a note before we move on, DALL-E 3 currently can't directly manipulate or edit images. So for example, you can't add in a vacation pic and tell it to erase your ex, for now at least, as they're constantly adding in new features. At this point, you now have a really good grasp of how to prompt and iterate with DALL-E to achieve your desired outcome. We're now going to build GPTs that leverage DALL-E, as GPTs are a great way to supercharge your creative workflow. GPTs are custom versions of ChatGPT that combine instructions, extra knowledge, and any combination of skills. So you can think of them as highly skilled and talented helpers for very specific tasks. This may sound like it's getting a bit complicated, but as we're about to see, it's very easy to wrap your head around GPTs, and you'll become a DALL-E 3 power user in no time. As an example, for some people, including myself, creating or writing great starting prompts can be tedious, especially if you find it hard to always start with a blank canvas. So now we'll be learning how to build a custom DALL-E 3 GPT that can not only help us ideate, but also supercharge our AI image generation workflow. To start, head over to the Explore tab, then click Create a GPT. Before we get going, switch to the Configure tab and make sure that DALL-E image generation is selected in the Capabilities section. This ensures our GPT will call upon DALL-E when needed. Back on the Create tab, this is where we're going to design and modify our custom GPT. And I'll take a moment just to appreciate how incredible this feature is. We're literally going to be doing some advanced coding without even writing a single line of code. Something like this just even months ago would have involved hacking together dozens of different tools. Okay, in the builder, we're going to let it know we'd like to make a creative who helps generate visually stunning images by asking good questions that help flesh out an idea to provide the key aspects needed to generate an image. Next, the GPT builder wants to know what name we'd like to give our GPT. I actually like its suggestion, Visual Muse, so let's go with that. Following our name selection, it then generates a logo for us. Let's tweak the logo to show how you can easily make changes in GPT Builder. And as you can see, we then get an updated logo. Now I should mention again, all of this is in beta, so hiccups and bugs are to be expected. For example, Here it's asking me how I feel about the image, but it then seems to have jumped into the next follow-up question before I could answer the prior one. The good thing is, if you answer both questions at the same time, it will still understand what you're saying. Though sometimes you'll find that it will prompt you one by one, and sometimes it will just happen to give you 2 questions. So your mileage may vary. So we'll let it know we like the logo and we'll like it to start with a specific question about the user's image idea. Now the follow-up question here is asking us what guardrails we'd like to put on our DALLE GPT. Let's let it know images should always look like they're from another universe, just for laughs. And just like that, Visual Muse is good to go. Before we test it out in the preview pane, let's simplify our conversation starters by heading over to the configure page. And let's change the 2 opening prompts to let's brainstorm an image, and the second one to be I need some inspiration for an image. And then we'll get rid of the last 2. You can also click into the instructions box to view how the GPT builder translated your input into instructions it'll follow. You can always add and remove instructions as you desire right in this window or through the regular GPT builder. Clicking into our instructions, you'll notice the last paragraph which it added itself about maintaining a supportive tone and encouraging creative exploration, guiding users towards envisioning scenes or elements that are surreal, ethereal, or distinctly unworldly. That is absolutely incredible, as I would have never imagined an instruction so detailed. Let's close out of our instructions by clicking close. And now let's test out our DALLE GPT. We'll go with the first prompt and get it to help us brainstorm. I'll go with an alien planet. Now, the good thing about GPTs is you can be as detailed as you want, or let it do its thing and see what it comes up with and then edit from there. So for example, I'll let it know that the sky will have multiple suns and moons, but that it can then decide on everything else. And then it gives me key details of the image, such as the landscape, the sky, the inhabitants, and the structures for consideration. And I can tweak these before getting to generate, but these look great, so let's see what the actual image looks like. And here's our final work of art. Now, this is a pretty basic GPT and is meant to show you just how capable yet easily customizable both ChatGPT and DALLE-3 are. And best part is, if you run out of ideas building your GPT, you could simply ask it to lend a hand. For example, let's ask it how else we could improve our GPT. And we'll do that back on the create page. And as you can see, it's trying to guide the GPT to a place where it can build upon really useful and refined details that it can then use to generate an image that the user will truly be happy with. And when all is said and done, remember to save your GPT. And you'll have the option to save it privately, get a shareable link, or make it public for when the GPT store rolls out. Before I hit save, you notice that even though we named our GPT Visual Muse, that actually didn't get translated to the GPT name in the top left corner. This again is 50-50, as there's GPTs I've made where the name I've given it in the builder is the name that the GPT takes. But if this happens, that's okay. Simply head to the configure page and then type in your GPT's name there. And now once your GPT has a name, you can then proceed to save it. And now look at our shiny new Visual Muse GPT ready to go. Your newly created GPT will either live on the left bar in the recently used GPTs or back on the Explore page under your My GPT section. Now, instead of building GPTs, you alternatively could create custom instructions by clicking on your username, then custom instructions. Just like GPTs, these allow for the customization of ChatGPT's and DALLE's responses based on your preferences and can be modified or removed at any time. The first box is where you give ChatGPT context about yourself, use case, and preferences. For example, it can be things such as where you're based, what you do for work, your hobbies, and so on. The second box is where you set the tone, response style, and length of responses you prefer. For example, some people prefer long, detailed responses, while some would much prefer short and straight to the point answers. If your use cases for DALLE and ChatGPT don't change much, you may be okay setting custom instructions here. Personally, I'd recommend the use of GPTs for the various tasks you'd like to do. This is because custom instructions set here apply to all your new conversations, whether they're started in the ChatGPT chat or DALL-E chat, whereas a GPT can have very specific instructions that apply just to itself. Okay, great job making it this far. We covered a lot of ground, and before we look at some of our key takeaways for DALL-E 3, let's talk about its limitations so that you can save time from troubleshooting. At the time of recording, prompts can be up to 400 characters long, which should be long enough in most situations, as yes, you want to be detailed, but also not convoluted. Next, it's worth noting both ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 have lots of guardrails in place, particularly when it comes to avoiding copyright infringement. This means that there'll be times where it falsely flags your prompts as violating the content or copyright policies, as we saw earlier, which then results in no image being generated. Best you can do in those scenarios is to tweak your prompt and try again, as it did work for us. Speaking of copyright, DALL-E won't let you replicate any living artist's work as it is protected by copyright law. Though of course, some people with very creative prompts seem to be able to get around this, but it does seem OpenAI is increasingly clamping down on those generations. However, anything in the public domain, such as Starry Night, is fair game. Also, beware of DALL-E's limits as these are constantly evolving. And lastly, when DALL-E merged into the public sphere, hands were its kryptonite. While they've come a long way, if you do generate images that feature fingers, be sure to vet them to make sure they look like human hands. So to wrap things up, here are 10 key takeaways for your DALL-E 3 journey. Be specific and detailed in your prompts. Take an iterative approach. The first image generated doesn't have to be perfect, and it's okay to have a back and forth with DALL-E. Set your desired aspect ratio in your opening prompt. If you'd like to use normal language instead of aspect ratios, you can simply let DALL-E know you'd like the image in standard or square format for 1:1, wide for 16:9, or vertical for mobile format. Be patient when generating text, or better yet, add it in after with an external tool for more control. Leverage DALL-E's AI vision capabilities for both inspiration and learning. Do build GPTs that each serve a specific purpose to save time in the long run. As mentioned previously, I'd pick GPTs any day over the custom instructions feature. Keep learning. This is still a very rapidly evolving area with many more advancements to come. And last but not least, have fun. We're truly living through a transformative time in history. Thanks for making it through the tutorial. I really hope you found it valuable and that you gained skills that you'll be able to use both in your professional and personal lives. If you have any questions or tips you'd like to share, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next one.